What's up everybody, this is Ultimate iDevice Vids, and today in this video we're going to be doing a durability drop test comparing the new Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra to the Apple iPhone 11 Pro Max. We're going to be doing 3 rounds of 3 drops on concrete for both of these devices. During the first round, we'll be dropping from a pocket height of 3 feet, the next round we'll be dropping from a chest or texting height of 4 feet, and the final round we'll be dropping from a head height or talking on the phone height from 5.2 feet. The first drop will be a face down drop, the second drop will be a back drop, and the third drop will be a side drop. It's also worth noting that you should take this video with somewhat of a grain of salt, as of course there's numerous factors that contribute to how a device handles when being dropped. Obviously, when you drop your phone, it most likely won't fall in this controlled of a way. However, in order to compare these devices fairly, I've done my best to make each drop as alike as possible. The Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra features Gorilla Glass Viscous, which Samsung dubs as the strongest glass ever in a smartphone, and the iPhone 11 Pro Max features what Apple dubs as the strongest glass in a smartphone. So it'll be interesting to see how these devices stack up in this durability test. Alright, so let's go ahead and kick things off with the face down drop from 3 feet with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And unfortunately, after just one 3 feet face down drop onto concrete, the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra's display has cracked. You could see in the bottom left corner there's some pretty serious cracking going on, and unfortunately it doesn't stop there. The in-screen fingerprint reader is completely broken as well. It's unable to recognize any fingerprints that I have set on the device. And I assume that that correlates with the fact that the device's screen is shattered. But other than that, the display does still appear to work. Of course, we'll inspect things more carefully at the end of this round. Alright, so moving on to the 3-foot back drop for the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And the back actually held up pretty well after this fall. However, on the front, the cracks were worsened a bit. You could see they spiderweb further up into the display. You know, that was caused by that rear impact. But at a first glance, things don't seem too much worse. Alright, and moving on to the side impact for the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra from 3 feet. And that flew out of our testing zone here. And upon inspection, things don't look too much worse. However, the cracks on the bottom left corner were definitely a little bit noticeably worse from this last drop. And there's definitely a nick where the device impacted the concrete, as you can see there. It's nothing too bad, but it's definitely there to stay. Alright, and moving on to the iPhone 11 Pro Max 3-foot face down drop. And the iPhone showed no damage whatsoever after the face down 3-foot drop. Perfectly fine, Face ID still works, nothing to complain about. And moving on to the back drop for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And same thing to report here. No damage on the back or front, both looking completely fine. Again, nothing to complain about here. And at a quick glance, the camera appears to be working perfectly fine as well, but once again, at the end of the round, I'll do a careful check of what is and what isn't working. And next up is the side drop at 3 feet for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And that definitely bounced off of our inspection zone as well. But as you can see upon inspection, there's definitely a noticeable nick in the corner where the device impacted the concrete. Again, not a huge deal, but it's definitely there to stay. I also noticed at this point where the antenna band sits on the bottom left corner of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, there is a little bit of separation starting on the left side of the antenna band. It was kind of jutting out a little bit when running my finger across the bottom of the phone. I definitely felt it jutting out a bit, so you can see the phone's definitely starting to show signs of shock. But other than that, absolutely nothing wrong with the iPhone. Front and back both remained uncracked. Face ID still works. Everything appears to be fine. Alright, and that concludes the 3-foot round. So at this point, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra's screen is cracked and the fingerprint reader is not working. However, other than that, the device is functioning properly. The cameras are fully functional, the buttons work, the facial recognition works, it's able to charge, the speakers work, the microphone works, and the S Pen works. However, the screen being shattered and the fingerprint reader being broken is definitely some pretty substantial damage. Meanwhile, the iPhone 11 Pro Max is doing great. There's just that little jutting out issue at the bottom of the phone, but other than that, not much to say in regards to the iPhone. And I think it's definitely worth mentioning that once a device does have damage, the more you drop it, of course, the more likely more damage is to happen based on that prior damage. So just keep that in mind throughout this video. And moving on to the 4-foot round, emulating a chest height drop. So kicking things off with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra face down 4-foot test. And upon inspection, it really doesn't look that much worse than before. If the cracks got worse on the display, it was only by a small amount. Next up is the back drop at 4 feet for the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And just like the previous face down drop, not much to report here. The back is still completely unshattered, the front doesn't really look any worse, cameras appear to be working, not much new to report. And moving on to the 4 feet side drop for the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. And when taking a look at the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, the first thing I noticed at this point was the growing amount of these dents at the bottom from these side impacts. You know, again, nothing too crazy, but definitely something that you're going to notice. But in regards to the display, again, it doesn't really look much worse. It seems to be staying at the same level, surprisingly, and the back is still undamaged. All right, and beginning round 2 for the iPhone with the 4-foot face down drop. And once again, the iPhone display did not shatter, which is quite impressive. However, I did notice this strange orange dot appear at this point on the display that stayed there no matter where I was. So even though it's not cracked, the iPhone screen is definitely starting to show some damage. And the back is also not cracked, as you can see. Next up is the back drop for the iPhone 11 Pro Max at 4 feet. And it didn't crack once again, so I'd say that's pretty impressive. Face ID still works, and other than the previously mentioned damages, nothing else seems to appear at this point. And moving on to the 4-foot side drop for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And unfortunately, the iPhone display has finally shattered. As you can see, starting from the bottom left corner, right where the separation issue I was mentioning earlier was starting, there is a pretty large crack that spiderwebs throughout the entire display. And also the area at the notch at the top of the iPhone is also very shattered as well. It's definitely a bit jagged in those two areas, being the bottom corner and the top notch, while the shatters in the center are definitely less noticeable and not really jagged. And even though the notch at the top of the iPhone sustained some pretty serious damage, Face ID still works. And that concludes the 4-foot round. So at this point, the Galaxy is pretty much in the same position it was at the end of round 1. Of course, it has those pretty serious cracks in the bottom left corner of the screen, and they do spiderweb out throughout the whole display. However, the facial recognition still works on the Galaxy. All the cameras still work perfectly, even the front-facing camera perfectly fine. The back is not shattered. Other than the cracks and, of course, the fingerprint sensor, the screen's working fine, the buttons are working fine. Charging works, the speakers work, the microphone works, and the S Pen still works. And on the other hand, the iPhone did sustain some pretty serious cracks towards the bottom left of the screen, again, right where that separation issue I was talking about occurred, and those do spiderweb up throughout the whole display, and once again, there's that substantial cracking in the notch as well. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also this strange orange dot on the display that is stuck there. However, that being said, once again, Face ID still works. The back cameras appear to be working perfectly. However, the front-facing camera, of course, due to all that damage to the notch, is very hazy and blurry. But all the buttons still work. It's able to charge. The speakers work. The microphone works as well. Alright, and moving on to round 3, which is a 5.2 foot drop, simulating head height as if you were talking on the phone and you dropped your phone. So kicking things off with the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, face down at 5.2 feet. And at this point, I definitely noticed some damage occurring to the bottom right bezel area. It's definitely more scuffed up and scraped than before. However, the screen is not immensely more cracked than it was before. Honestly, it looks more or less the same. Still appears to be working properly, and the back is also uncracked as well. Next up is the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra back drop from 5.2 feet. And upon inspection, the top right corner of the back is cracked, as you can see right there. It's definitely not widespread at all. It's very isolated in that specific area. I'm honestly starting to think that the large camera hump in the back is definitely protecting that back glass from shattering just because it protrudes so much. And that being said, the camera system itself is not cracked as well. So it's doing a very good job, both holding up on its own, and I believe it's protecting the back glass from these back drops as well. Next up, we're going to do a side drop for the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra at 5.2 feet. And at this point, the bottom area of the device, both the bezel area and the actual bottom, are both pretty scuffed and nicked up, as to be expected. And the screen, maybe a little bit more shattered, but more or less looks similar to the way it was before. The back is unchanged, the camera system looks fine, and I'm definitely impressed that the display hasn't shattered much worse at this point. It's more or less staying kind of similar to the way it's been ever since the first shatter. And moving on to the third round for the iPhone 11 Pro Max, starting off with the face down drop at 5.2 feet. And upon inspection, the shattering on the front of the iPhone has gotten significantly worse. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, it's extremely shattered and it's very jagged. It's going to be very difficult to get to the control center here without cutting your finger. The front-facing camera at this point is extremely blurry. It's basically unusable by my standards and probably most people's as well. But the back cameras appear to be fine here. So let's go ahead and now move on to the back drop from 5.2 feet for the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And as you can see here, the back glass of the iPhone finally shattered, and it shattered quite bad, especially towards the camera area itself. It is extremely, extremely jagged, and you can see there the cracks are pretty much covering the entire back, and outside the front is basically the same as it was before. And interestingly enough, even though the glass around all the cameras is shattered, you can see the cameras on the back appear to be working perfectly fine. I think it's just the glass around them that's damaged. And moving on to our last drop being the iPhone 11 Pro Max 5.2 foot side drop. And the side drop from 5.2 feet totaled the back of the iPhone 11 Pro Max. As you can see, the back is absolutely covered in cracks, and towards the bottom of the back, you could actually start to see some of the internals of the phone because a piece of the glass actually fell off. And the front is in pretty bad shape with some serious cracks going on as well. And also, unfortunately, Face ID no longer works. It's just not recognizing my face at all. Once again, most likely attributed to all that severe cracking towards the notch of the iPhone at the top. Also, as you can see there's this strange green color behind the cracked glass on the back of the iPhone 11 Pro Max, as you can see right there. I mean, I would not feel comfortable or recommend using a device that's this damaged just in terms of safety. So at the end of the day, if I had to give a winner to this test, I would definitely give it to the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. As I said earlier, there's certainly a degree of randomness to these tests. But in this example, the Galaxy definitely came out of this test being a more usable device. The cracked glass on the Galaxy is definitely less sharp and jagged than the cracked glass on the iPhone. Also, all of the cameras on the Galaxy appear to be working perfectly, while on the iPhone, the front-facing camera is basically useless due to all those cracks towards the notch of the iPhone. Although, of course, as we said earlier, the fingerprint reader in the Galaxy is completely broken, which is a big feature for the Galaxy, so that's definitely some pretty substantial damage. So I just want to go over what does and doesn't work on each device at the very end of the test here. So starting with the iPhone, other than all of the cracks, the screen is fully responsive and functional. However, there's these very strange colored dots in the right-hand side of the screen in the top. It's currently not occupying a large portion of the screen. However, it's definitely some noticeable screen damage. The back cameras on the iPhone all appear to be working perfectly fine, but once again, the front-facing camera is quite hindered by all those cracks. All the physical buttons on the iPhone work. Face ID no longer works, unfortunately. It's able to be charged, even though I wouldn't recommend charging a device that's this damaged for safety. The speakers do work, and the microphone works. In terms of the Galaxy, the screen is fully functional other than the cracks. All the cameras appear to be working perfectly fine. The physical buttons are working perfectly fine. Facial recognition does work, however, once again, the fingerprint reader does not work. The device is able to be charged. The speakers work, the microphone works, and the S Pen works. And as I said earlier, the back of the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has held up quite well. You can see there is just, once again, that small isolated crack in the corner, but the rest of the back is completely fine. Once again, I think that has to do with that large protruding camera system, which once again completely still works, so that's definitely pretty impressive. And at the end of the day, just considering how many times we dropped these devices, I'd say they both did okay in this test. I definitely recommend using a case on your device because you never know when you're going to get that particularly bad fall that could crack your display or the back of your device. But alright everybody, that wraps it up for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.